So we're going to look at two events that are happening at the same time and are very much related to the city of Berlin. One is called the Berlin Blockade, and the other is called the Berlin Airlift. And to really understand them, we got to get a little bit of context that goes back to World War II. So if you remember, at the end of World War II, particularly after the D-Day invasion of Normandy in northern France in June of 1944, the Allied powers put a lot of pressure on Germany from the West on that Western front. And that really takes pressure off of the Soviet Union on the Eastern front. And as the US and Great Britain and France take control of Italy, they start to all move in on Germany. So we have the Soviet Union moving in from the east towards Germany, and in fact, they will take control of like the eastern part of Germany, while the other Allied powers, US, France, and Britain, are coming in from the south as they took control of Italy, and from France and from Britain, and they will take control of the western part of Germany. And if you zoom into Germany after the war, you see here that the Soviet Union controlled this eastern chunk of Germany, and then the other three nations controlled the western part of Germany. And we end up with really two Germanys because the United States, Great Britain, and France had pledged to allow democratic elections, and eventually those three zones will become collectively what's known as the nation of West Germany. We'll have two Germanys for a while. West Germany that's democratic, and East Germany that is communist. And in fact, just note that the idea of two nations becomes a big deal in the Cold War. We're going to look at two Koreas. We're going to look later at two Vietnams as well. Well, as the war is winding down in the spring of 1945, all of these nations send troops to the city of Berlin. And you'll notice that Berlin is well within East Germany, well within that communist Soviet-controlled section of Germany. And if we zoom in on Berlin, we'll see that as a result of sending troops there, the city was divided into four sectors controlled by France, Britain, and the US, and the Soviet Union. So it kind of reflects in some ways what all of Germany is doing, but it's well within the communist East Germany zone. And so West Berlin is allowed to become democratic. So we have two Berlins now. The city is divided, whereas everything around West Berlin, including East Berlin and the rest of East Germany, becomes communist. And so West Berlin basically became this island of democracy, and the Soviet Union really didn't like that. And to try to get control of West Berlin, in 1948, the Soviet Union cuts off all travel in and out of the city of West Berlin, all rail lines, roadways, and so on. This is known as the Berlin Blockade. They're blocking West Germany. So you can imagine if you don't have trucks and trains coming in and out of your city, it's going to be hard to get things like food and other supplies. And the United States and Britain and France responded, along with the help of a number of other nations that provided pilots and money and so on, what's called the Berlin Airlift. They're basically going to fly planes in and out of West Berlin for about a year. And as you're completing this lesson, really take a look at the next slide. I have a link to a website that takes a look at the cost of that, how many planes they used, how often. There were times where they were, landing one plane as another one's taking off on the other end of the runway. It was pretty busy. And some people would wonder, like, why spend so much time, money, and resources for what's really a little dot on the map? Why would you fly in so many troops in this Berlin airlift and troops and somewhat more supplies and goods and so on? Well, the reason was it falls into the US's policy of containment. And that idea that while the United States and its allies can't do anything about where communism already exists, such as in Eastern Europe or East Germany or East Berlin, it can prevent communism from spreading where it doesn't exist. And that would include West Berlin. So from the standpoint of containment, it's seen as a tremendous success.